I'm afraid for Donald Trump to win the 2024 election. I know this is going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, but if you know me, it's not really as you might think it could be. Donald Trump winning this election will change this entire country in ways that we've never seen. And I'm talking about all of them will be positive. I'm not worried about what he would do to our country if and when he wins. It's what the opposition is going to do. You got to understand a Donald Trump presidency most likely means we won't see a liberal president for a long time. And that's simply because we've one time had a liberal domination of America. They completely dominated this whole country until Donald Trump came in and gave them an opponent that was worthy. He came in, he won an election. We saw how good it was, but at the same time, we saw through hate and propaganda of what the result of that was in 2020. Through propaganda, through the hate that it was spewed through the media, people believed that Joe Biden could provide a better presidency, a better country for Americans. We found out all of that is completely false. So now the Great Awakening, it happened. Nothing could stop it. It happened. And it all happened due to Biden becoming president. What happens after? Now people have something to compare and contrast. They can say, well, now we can see what we can benefit from of having a president that isn't a part of the establishment. And we can see what happens when the establishment take back over. And it couldn't be any more clear because the vice president is actually running to be president. And she was right beside the president of the United States. She had her hand in this country. She had the ability to change, and she did this country. When the people wake up in November and they choose not to vote for Kamala Harris, this RFK announcement just pretty much solidified it. And did you know that she's been polling less since the DNC? Most independents, they didn't like the message. It didn't resonate with them. They felt like it was more or less a Biden. Independents at this point want cheaper groceries. Independents at this point want cheaper gas. When Democrats realize after Trump's win that there's a great chance they won't be able to regain power for the next 30 to 40 years, and that sounds like a stretch. I'm talking about there is a possibility for us to regain the House, the Senate, and presidency because they screwed up so bad. What are they willing to do at that point when they lose authority? What are they willing to do when they lose their power? The thing about it, we've seen Democrats do some very disingenuous things. And I'm not speaking about Democrat voters. So if you're a Democrat or liberal that's watching this, please don't get offended. Trust me, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the handlers. I'm talking about those that's in control. I'm talking about the media. And I'm talking about the politicians. I'm not talking about the regular Democrat that is choosing to vote with their heart to what they truly believe is right. Because what we have to understand as conservatives and what you have to understand as liberals, we all think we're the good guy. Only very few times throughout this entire war that we have between each other that we get confirmations that we're on the right part of this entire fight. Why do I say that? Because all of our talking points and all of our media, all of our visionaries, all of the leaders in our parties, most of the time, we sound pretty similar. So it's kind of hard to tell the difference between the two when you really start thinking about what everyone claims the root of the problem is. Sad. This whole thing is ran by puppet strings. Everyone knows it. But the worst part is what happens when we see a desperate Democrat Party. They're willing to be very cruel when they have power. What are they willing to be when they lose it? What are they willing to give to gain everything again? You know, they understand culture. They control culture. What would they do to manipulate the culture against their own values and rules? We saw what happened during the Trump presidency. He couldn't breathe without getting bad publicity. I'm afraid for America because they set our country on fire when he won. Legit set them on fire. They made the border crisis as bad as they possibly could. They made America as hateful as the 1960s. All because a man that everyone could see with their eyes and hear with their ears, not being told by anyone and not being shown by anyone, but through their own perspective and their own experiences, that they could see that this is a candidate that is taking care of them, their children, their family. It takes a lot of propaganda for you to ignore what's in front of you. And for them to be able to manipulate the masses again, it will take events like we've never seen before. I fear for Americans if Democrats realize how over it is for the entire party. It isn't what it used to be. The fact Beyonce just bailed on Kamala like that tells you a lot, because these celebrities now can have news that's leaked, because TMZ leaked it and said that they apologized for getting it wrong. I find it odd. TMZ have a history. A lot of people don't know this. Look up the owner of TMZ. He has a history with an intelligence agency outside the United States, happening to be a ally of the United States. He has great, great, great information gathering skills. They don't really get things wrong, especially something like Beyonce speaking at the DNC. What happens is these celebrities are starting to see they're getting more backlash than public support. And that leads to a drop in currency. And you can't allow that, because that's what most people are actually speaking for. They're not speaking for the country. They're speaking for the dollar that the country represents. And we all see that. So what's going to happen? They're going to lose more and more celebrities, or even worse, they're going to gain more and more desperate has-beens. Because the more you gain desperate has-beens, the more it appears that you're desperate yourself for some type of support. Didn't they used to say that about Republicans? I think so. I think so. I think they used to say that about Republicans. So things are coming full circle. It's coming full circle, and it's just as above, so below. It's nothing new under the sun. Those statements ring true. If you look back in the past, the conservative right controlled media back in the early 90s. And it's hard when I bring this up to people. Look at the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Look at Family Matters. Look at the commercials back then. Typically on a television show, when it was time for people to eat, it wasn't strange to see them say grace. And it wasn't strange to see shows like Good Times, and I know this is before the 90s, but it keeps on that conservative media whole grip. It just started to lose its hold in the 90s. So I say 90s because that was when it was at its final of its peak. They had control of the United States and the media. If you look at any of the black television shows, they had to speak about the importance of not being in the game, the importance of having protected intercourse. It spoke on the importance of having a nuclear family. Good Times did that. Many television shows did that. And now what we have is Bad Girls Club, Baddies, Pop the Balloon. These things are intentional. It shifted from family focus because it was conservative media. But the problem was conservatives started to indulge in cancel culture when it was too powerful. Canceling off Harry Potter, canceling off GTA, canceling off rock music, canceling off hip hop. Conservatives were once the same thing that we hate. And once you indulge in cancel culture, you become the villains. You become the bullies. When you become the bullies, it leads to public outcry and public support for those that claim to be bullied. Liberals end up taking over. Liberals ended up gaining control of our media, and the rest was history. They took cancel culture and made it more powerful than any conservative could have. And what we see is they became the bullies, and the rest of America noticed it, and they started to sympathize with those that's being bullied. There's a reason why presidential candidates that survive an assassination attempt, it almost guarantees that they win the election. People love an underdog, and people sympathize with the victim. I fear for what's about to happen in America, because the Democrats are going to be the victims. What are they willing to do to gain our sympathy yet again?